So don't get so wrapped up in, I got to have this perfect vision and it's got to be compelling and it's got to be good and it's got to be like that, guys. And no, just do the best you can and start driving. And then in a month, after you've been doing all of this work, you can go back to your vision statement and say, oh, you know what? I have new information. Let me redraft this vision, because there's things that came up. There's relationships that I had. There's conversations I enjoyed. There's opportunities that presented themselves. And now I have to cast a new vision. So it's a dynamic thing. It's not a static thing. So gentlemen, as you know, I usually do this podcast with my good friend and co-host Kipp Sorensen. He may be joining us a little bit late, just getting into the week after a good Memorial Day weekend. I hope you guys had a good one as well. It is interesting when I hear people say things like Happy Memorial Day. And you know, it's interesting because it is supposed to be a happy day for sure. And we have been afforded so many incredible blessings from the men and women who have given their lives to ensure that we can pursue liberty and happiness and have the freedoms that we enjoy. So I don't feel bad about enjoying my day on Memorial Day. Sometimes I hear people who will really play the guilt card quite heavily and you know, tell you that maybe you're not supposed to enjoy it, or that it's you shouldn't be as happy or excited or thrilled, or it shouldn't be the start of summer. And I don't really agree with that. I think the men and women who have died to give us those freedoms would probably want us to enjoy the days like that. But that being said, I think it's also important that we do remember the reason for Memorial Day and the purpose behind it. And in between, or in the midst of the beer and the barbecue and the lake and the grilling and the enjoyment with family and friends, that you remember that somebody else died. Many people died for you to have that luxury. I cannot imagine living in another country. And I feel like we have so many blessings, but unfortunately, we often forget the source of those blessings, which is from God directly, and then, of course, on the backs and hands and blood of those men and women who have given their all. So I hope you enjoyed the weekend. I did some hiking and had a really good time, and now we're back to it. So I'm going to jump into the podcast, and hopefully when Kipp is able to make it, he'll jump on too, and we'll give him a hard time for being late, and then we'll drive on. So today is your Ask Me Anything. I'm going to answer some questions primarily from, we fielded questions from a lot of different places today, from our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council, which you can find at orderofman.com/Iron Council. Then we'll probably jump over to Instagram, and then if we have time, we'll jump over to our Facebook group. So let's get to question number 1. So this one comes from a longtime member of the Iron Council, and this is Prumit Ball. He says he wants to know tips and strategies on staying focused on gym and jiu-jitsu with it getting nicer outside. And then there's some context. He said he often finds himself doing more outdoor activities in the summer, or as it should be, but it also comes at the cost of gym and jiu-jitsu. They just don't feel as interesting when it's warmer, and also the summer outdoor activities don't seem to make up for the intensity that I'm seemingly giving up. So how do you both stay engaged when the sun is shining right outside? Specifically true for people living in colder areas. He's in Wisconsin. Well, I can definitely attest for this. When I was living in Maine, obviously very, very cold during the winter, and so going inside in the gym or training jiu-jitsu was very easy, but during those summer months, I wanted to be at the lake. I wanted to enjoy the outdoors. I wanted to be hiking. And what I would say is you should do that, because the benefits of being outside and the vitamin D and all of the great and wonderful things that come from being in nature, and the peace and solace and excitement and wonder and curiosity and exploring the outdoors, I think can't really be matched by a lot of other things. So I try not to, and maybe this is my older age as I get a little older speaking up, so rigid in my training program that I can't be flexible as things arise. That's not to say that I won't train at the gym. I go to the gym just about every day, 4 to 5 days a week. And I go early in the morning, usually when it's still a little bit dark outside. The kids are all in bed, and I can go take advantage of that. In the afternoon or maybe in the early evening, I'll go for a walk, or I'll go for a run. I'm doing some running training right now, so I'll go for a run when it's cooled off a little bit. And then outside of that, my weekends are spent hiking. The last, I think, 2 or 3 weekends, I've been on hikes and been outdoors, and I've enjoyed that as well. So I think just be more flexible in your schedule. And I know that maybe the intensity changes, but you can always do a workout outside. You can go for a run and put a weighted vest on. You can go to the park and do a park workout. You can get some buddies together and go do some park training. You could even jump on Amazon if you wanted to and buy some mats off Amazon and get a buddy or two together and pull them out of the garage and train outdoors. And that's a possibility as well. So there are a lot of workarounds, but what I would say is just don't be too rigid in your training that you don't get to enjoy life. I think life is meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to have purpose and direction and clarity to it, but I also think it's meant to be enjoyed. And I think Kipp might say, well, train anyways, but there's got to be some room for other desires, ambitions, and hobbies that you have as well. This one comes from Jeremy Coffey. He says, any tips on achieving balance between being intense and driven with being present and joyful with your family? Well, Jeremy, the first thing I'd say is this misnomer a bit of balance. I don't like that term because I think when people use that term, what they're suggesting is that there's this perfect place. If intensity and drive were on one end of the spectrum and being present and joyful were on the other, then you have to find that line where you should just operate. And I don't think that's the case. And even if you did find that line, it will change this afternoon, right? One of your kids will break their arm, heaven forbid, or you'll have a deadline at work that you need to do and take care of. And so things come up throughout the day that are constantly changing. So I don't look at balance as this place where we arrive. I look at it as a verb, balancing. And balancing, if you're on a skateboard or my kids and I ride around on our one wheel every once in a while, it's thousands of little micro adjustments along the way to react to where I want to go, to react to the dips and turns in the road, to react to a rock or a bump that I might have to deal with, or move out of the way of a car or whatever. So I'm constantly making adjustments, and that to me is balancing. Now, that being said, you're also painting a bit of a false dichotomy. You're saying essentially that I can either be intense and driven or I can be present and joyful. And my question is, why can't you be both? Why can't you be intense towards the things that you want to achieve? And why can't you be driven towards those things and also be present in the moment and still find joy and happiness in your life and fulfillment? Now, what I think you might be alluding to is that it's easier for men, I think generally, to be more intense and driven at work than it is to be at home. At least I feel that way. And sometimes when I get home and my kids are there and we're doing things, it's like I want to be out performing and I want to be out achieving and I have ambitions and I want to make money and I want to grow my business, and all of that is noble. But what's been helpful for me is taking the same type of intensity and drive, purpose, and clarity in my professional life and moving that over into my personal life. So I can be just as driven at home to create really great relationships with my kids. I can be just as intense towards my objectives at work as I can be at home when I'm trying to build those relationships or trying to build new hobbies or trying to run a successful household. I think what you need to do and what most men need to do is to define what that actually looks like. So most guys who are fathers and husbands will say, I would like to be a better father and husband, and that's good. But you don't really know what that means. See, if I said, I want to be a better entrepreneur, well, essentially that means I want more clients and I want to make more money and I want to help more people. It's very tangible. Or I want to be more successful financially. Look at your bank account. Do you have more money in your bank account than you did yesterday? Okay, then you're on the right track. But how do you measure being a better father? You have to decide that for yourself. Is it time and attention with your kids? Is it building something or engaged in a new hobby? Is it coaching your kids' sports teams? Is it working out with them? Is it reading them books? Is it teaching them like education and schooling? It could be different for everybody, but unless and until you've defined what it is, you're always going to feel like you're unproductive at home. And you shouldn't feel that way. You should feel productive. So start defining what exactly you want to be doing at home, and don't look at it as you relaxing or you wasting time. Start taking some of that intensity and drive that you bring to your professional career and infuse it into your personal life. And I think for men, you are going to find more presence in that and more joy. I don't equate joy with sitting around doing nothing, watching cartoons with my kids. Now, sometimes we need that, and we'll all watch a movie together or we'll play a game together. My youngest son loves Lego. I do too, so that works out. But sometimes I don't want to do that, but he wants to. And so I make that sacrifice or investment of my time in him. But that doesn't mean that you just need to sit around and do nothing. You still are being productive. You just need to define what it is. And some people might even make the case, and I think this is probably more of a feminine approach, is that, well, you don't have to worry about being productive. You should just be present and enjoy it. And like, that's not really how men engage, especially intense men. So you don't have to fit into that mold. You can be intense within reason and appropriately, and still find the joy and satisfaction in leading your family well. I hope that helps. Elijah Elliott, he says, in regards to helping others, where should a man draw the line between accepting responsibility and enabling, especially when it comes to family? Well, enabling is never good. There's no line between teaching your family how to accept responsibility and enabling them. Now, so I just want to, that might be a semantical argument, but I really want to make sure that it's clear that anytime you're enabling your children, for example, to behave a certain way, that's not an appropriate thing. Enabling is not a positive thing ever. Now, there may be times where you would need to step in, and I would say the line there is when your children are in danger, or they're going to hurt themselves or cause harm to somebody else, or maybe they just can't handle what they're currently dealing with. If maybe one of your children has had a hard day at school, and they got picked on or bullied or whatever it might be, and you decide that that's a day that you need to get after them about being better of cleaning their room and helping with responsibilities around the house. Well, if they're having a horrible day and it's just been completely difficult, that's not to say they don't have to manage their responsibilities, but I think we can show a little bit of empathy and see that, okay, maybe the way I'm delivering this needs to be done differently. And I think that's what you need to do. So I would never not allow the people that I love to take responsibility for the things that need to be done around the house or the way they show up with the rest of the family. But if they're in danger or somebody else is in danger, well, that would be a moment to step in. But outside of that, always help them accept responsibility, clearly communicate what the expectations and the standards are, and uphold those boundaries and administer consequences and discipline as required. So I hope that helps. All right, guys, let's jump over to Instagram. So this one comes from New Life Farm Glamping. This is Corey. He's been a good friend for a while. And he says, after a divorce, I understand the value of healing and rebuilding yourself. I've even heard the prior suggested before your attempt to get into another committed relationship. Do you believe it's necessary to have yourself all figured out and your life back in order before getting into a relationship? Or is there room to bring someone else into your life at any point and continue the process of healing, growing, and rebuilding together? I think this is a great question, and it's one that I think a lot of men get wrong. Even when I went through my divorce and I started dating again, I tend to be a little bit more public facing because of the position I'm here in with Order of Man. And I can't tell you the amount of messages that I got from other people that said just that. Oh, you should heal yourself, fix yourself, repair yourself. You shouldn't get back into dating. I heard that all the time. The reality is that anytime somebody says it's too soon for you to start dating is just picking an arbitrary number they know nothing about. So if you jump right back into the dating scene after 2, 3, 4 weeks or a month or a couple of months and people think it's too early, they don't really have any relevance in your life because they don't know what you're experiencing and going through. It's almost like asking, what arbitrary number of days or months or years should I consult with you on when it's appropriate for me to date? And I don't think that anybody has the final answer or say on that except for yourself. Now, in the spirit of the question that you're asking, I do believe that you should continue to work on yourself. And I do believe that there's a lot of work that you can do on your own. But I don't think it's exclusive to being single. And I don't think that, I actually don't believe that you can fully heal yourself on your own. In fact, I think that's impossible. Because if you could do that on your own, fully heal, quote unquote, heal yourself or fix yourself or whatever terminology you want to use, then it's likely you would have already done it because you're already doing the things that you know how to do. The beauty of a relationship, whether it's a friendship or even a romantic relationship, is that the idea is that you get into a relationship with somebody who challenges you in a healthy, positive, and constructive way. Sure, they align with your vision, similar goals and desires, even similar pursuits, interests, and activities. But if they don't challenge you in some way, what would be the point of being in a relationship? And so I don't actually think that you can fully, again, quote unquote, heal yourself until you actually start getting into relationships again. That's been my opinion, and that's been my experience. Now, you do have to ask yourself why you might be getting into a romantic relationship, because I've seen plenty of men, and I've talked with a lot of men about this, who are getting into relationships very quickly to fill a void or a gap or an emptiness in who they are. And I think that could become a problem. It becomes a problem because you, if that's what you're trying to do and feel validated maybe even, especially after a divorce and failed relationship, if you are looking for that from somebody else, not only are you going to be waiting a very long time because nobody gives you exactly what you want all the time, even the best relationships you have, but it's also going to cause you to overlook red flags. And I've talked with a lot of men who have gotten into quick relationships after a breakup or a divorce or a separation or whatever, and they end up getting into a relationship. They end up potentially getting married and creating a lifelong partnership with this person. And then 2-3 years down the road, without any corrected behavior on their part or a new way of looking at things, they find themselves in a toxic relationship with a woman that is not aligned with their values, with a woman who isn't compatible with them. And it creates a lot of hardship for both the man and the woman. And they could have known better if only they got into a relationship because they felt like they were in a good place to love, to lead, to serve, to be served. And they learned lessons from their previous relationships that helped them be better in these relationships. And if that's why you're dating and getting back into the dating space, then you are more likely to acknowledge the red flags that pop up. Oh, good to see Kipp here. Kipp finally joined us. So glad to have Kipp here 28 minutes late. I'm just talking about some red flags real quick, and then I'll let you have your minute for excuses on this one. What I was saying is that if a man gets back into dating too quickly after a divorce or for the wrong reasons, he's likely to overlook red flags because he's trying to fill a void or a gap in his life with another woman without the awareness and ability to bring something new to his new relationship. So, Corey, that was a great question. Kipp, if you care, you can go back and catch the replay on that since you're 28 minutes late.
Would you say he overlooks your own red flags as well. Like maybe even the red flags in the women, but like what were your red flags from the previous relationship as well?
Oh, I didn't think about that, but I actually think that's a really good point, because he was asking if you need to fully work on yourself and heal yourself before you date again. And I said no. And I said, you can't, because you can't, I don't think you can fully quote unquote heal yourself if you're not in a relationship. I think there's
the reps that you need.
Not only the reps, it's the challenge of a relationship.
Yeah.
Like I can do a lot of inner work. I can journal. I can reflect. I can take responsibility for a previous relationship to the degree that I'm responsible for it. But at some point, you need a woman in your life to be able to challenge you, teach you new things, expose some weaknesses and vulnerabilities in you, but a woman who can do it in a very constructive and healthy and positive way. You can't get that by isolating and operating in solitude for the rest of your life because you're quote unquote not ready.
Got it. Well, and it's like how many other elements of life that we talk about this. It's like, oh, I want to get in physical shape. How do you learn how to do that? You start working out, right? There's no other way to learn it other than in the process of actually doing it. So.
Well, and that actually brings up a good point too, is I think too many men will often jump into a relationship with the expectation of, I've got to find the one. Yeah. And if you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, eventually you'll make it fit, but you'll end up breaking something along the way, right? Yeah. So you don't need, if you don't feel like I have to find the next woman, I have to get married, I have to be in a relationship, then you can say, oh, that's a square peg and that's a round hole and that doesn't work. And you can move on to a potentially better relationship that fits a lot better because you're both in a different space, mindset, compatibility, and priorities.
Got it.
All right, well, let's go to the next question. So this one comes from Simone Tony 4. This is over on Instagram, Kipp. And it says, how did you find your identity? Or what was the moment you realized, quote unquote, this is me? I'm struggling to create a vision that feels right for me, and I think it's due to my undefined identity. Thank you so much for all you do. You've already changed my life. I saw this question a little earlier, and I want to give it, I hope this is an interesting perspective. I don't think I've found my identity. And what I mean by that is my identity is going to constantly shift. Who I am right now as a result of the questions being asked or the result of the conversation we had or the result of the weekend that I had or the result of a book that I read will change my identity. And that's a good thing. So I actually choose to look at it and say, I'm comfortable with where I am because the integrity gap, the gap between what I want and what I'm doing continues to lessen, and I'm bridging that gap. So I'm really comfortable in my life with where I am right now, but I'm also open and receptive to being somebody new tomorrow if it serves me and the people that I love. So if I have a really powerful conversation with somebody and it causes me to reflect or question my own beliefs as of today, I'm happy to embrace at least the idea that maybe they're right and it's something I don't know, and that makes me a new man. Every conversation, every relationship, every experience, every factor of life makes you somebody new. And so maybe stop chasing around like, I need to find my identity, and start bridging the integrity gap, knowing that that will develop and manifest over time, and be open to the idea that you'll be somebody new. If you're struggling to create a vision, I think, without having any context here, what's happening is that you think it should be a certain way and it's not good enough for you right now. And I think that's a problem. You can only see as far as you can see. You know, if I'm driving down the road in the middle of the night, I've got my headlights and they only go out so far. If I'm in a new area, I can't see beyond what my headlights are going to show me, and I have no idea what's on the other side. What it takes is casting the headlight as far as it can go and still be effective, making sure I'm going in the right direction and staying on the road. And then as soon as I progress and drive down that road, my headlights go out further and further and further, and then I pivot and adjust. So don't get so wrapped up in, I got to have this perfect vision and it's got to be compelling and it's got to be good and it's got to be like that, guys. And no, just do the best you can and start driving. And then in a month, after you've been doing all of this work, you can go back to your vision statement and say, oh, you know what? I have new information. Let me redraft this vision. Because there's things that came up. There's relationships that I had. There's conversations I enjoyed. There's opportunities that presented themselves. And now I have to cast a new vision. So it's a dynamic thing. It's not a static thing.
Yeah. Why do you think he's asking that? What's the psychology? What's the root cause of that question? Like I find it really interesting. Like, what's the desire to put pen to paper and say, I need to identify my identity? And I don't think it has to do with writing a vision.
It's insecurity. I think he's insecure, and I'm not trying to beat him up by any means here. Like, we've all been here. But he's insecure with who he is. He doesn't feel confident in who he is. And so when things are presented,
he wants to create something and then try to live into it instead.
Right. Because if I have... Yeah. Okay, so if I don't know, like I don't have like an instruction manual to anything here, but like here's a piece of paper. It's a tax document, so I'll go like this because nobody needs to see it. But there's instructions on here, right? Like, so I can follow the instructions. That makes it easy. But life doesn't have instructions. And when we don't have instructions, at least for me, I try to label things. I try to create systems and tools to make life easier to live. And I actually don't think that's wrong. We should have systems that work for us. But when we don't have any sort of system, then we feel like we're always second guessing ourselves. We feel like we're always behind the eight ball a little bit, and the next thing throws us off, and we can't be decisive in our actions because we don't have anything to align with our vision. Or maybe we focus heavily on past wrong decisions instead of good decisions that you've made in the past. And we don't have a litmus test for the way we should be making decisions. So I don't think it's wrong, but to me, it represents insecurity. And it might be, again, that integrity gap of, I know I want to be something, I know I'm not something, so that feels really disheartening. And I've been there. So cast the vision as best you can and start working towards that, bridging the integrity gap. And bridging the integrity gap is what shores up the insecurities.
Well, and a little bit of in between the lines, right, that I'm picking up from you, Ryan, and maybe this is just my interpretation around the question, is you can only be where you are based upon your current state of understanding and comprehension.
Yeah.
So you can... there's ultimate vision and identity. Yeah, but guess what? Like, you may not be there yet. So where are you today? What's the best version of you right now? And be that.
You know
right?
what?
I mean, and it's sometimes because I think if I plant this canvas of this identity and so far removed from who I am, Ryan, then I can't even get there. I can't relate to it. It's not real. And then what am I doing today in between now and then? Kicking myself in the ass over and over about never being good enough about it, right? Versus like, what do I have today? What is within my lap today? And to your point, am I living in integrity right now with the man that I am right now? Knowing that there's a better version, And, and to your point, just to reiterate it, because I think it's really important, is you're not the same person you were a year ago. Thank goodness. And neither am I.
Yeah.
So this isn't something, it's something that's evolving and creating, not something that gets casted in, someday, right?
Well, there's a great quote, and it's, no man steps in the same river twice, for he is not the same man, and it is not the same river. Like, everything is constantly changing all around us, and you are a different person, to your point, today than you were yesterday. You know what this also does, this way of thinking of you be present with where you are and do what you can? There's another quote by Theodore Roosevelt that says, do what you can with what you have where you are.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. And
literally. You have no other choice.
There's no other choice.
Yeah. Do something with it or don't do something with it. But either way, you are where you are.
And in the meantime, figure out what you need to know to be better tomorrow. But there's something else that this does, and I'm learning this slowly and painfully in some ways. When you have this mentality of, hey, I'm making the most of the moment I'm in with the tools and resources, knowledge, information I have. If that's the case, then what that means is that when you were a different man, maybe a lesser version of the man that you are today, you were doing the same thing. But what you're doing, okay, so I'll give you a very specific example. When I was in the throes of my drinking, I was doing what I could have been doing in that moment. That's all I could do. Now, that doesn't excuse poor behavior, because even my poor behavior were learned lessons that I applied in my life in a very destructive way to me and people around me. But that's literally all I can do. Now, when I go back, I'm not looking at it from the position I was 3 years ago. I'm looking back on it with the knowledge I have 3 years in the future. So looking back, I can say, you know what? I was a total dick. And I was not being what I could have been and who I could have been. And that's not accurate. It feels like it's accurate because you're dealing in your current reality, but you were what you could have been then. And really the only thing you can change now is, what did I need to learn in order to be something different today? But I cannot go back and revisit the past and say, oh man, you know, if only I. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's done.
This is the power of letting go. It is what it is. You know, and it doesn't serve anybody for us to look back at our past. Oh, I should have, I shouldn't have, or I should have done. But you didn't.
Right.
Or you did exactly what you did.
Yeah.
So let go of what you think should have been or what you should have done, because you did what you did. And this is the power of presence, right? Because ultimately it's like, okay, great, I can look at it. But what do I do with it right now where I am is ultimately all that matters, because it doesn't ever serve you to go back and go, oh, I should have. This is why we both get sideways when we get people like, what would you tell yourself when you're 14? It's like,
I don't know.
I don't even like that way of thinking. I think it's a bad way of thinking, right? Because I could waste the moment going through all the shit I should have never done.
Well,
does it serve me?
No. I had this guy reach out a couple of days ago, and I had posted something, and he's like, oh man, he messaged me back. He's like, this is so good. Where was this 10 years ago when I needed it? And I wrote him back and I said, would you have listened? And he wrote me back. He's like, no, probably not. I'm like, so it was actually probably there because I didn't create whatever concept I just shared with you. You just didn't hear it or didn't receive it because of the position
you
were
weren't
in.
ready for it.
Right.
Yeah.
I like this idea of letting go, but you know, there is one thing I would say, and I was playing pickleball with my two of my sons and one of my oldest son's friends over the weekend. We played a ton of pickleball, and it's fun. I love it. And
it's fun.
My oldest son's friend he's athletic by nature, but he's also really good at pickleball. And he kept doing this like one specific move, and he kept getting me like to go one way and then hitting it the other way. And he did it like 3 times in a row. But you know how many times he didn't do it? 4 times in a row. Because I learned and I adapted. Yeah. And then it didn't work. And then he needed to figure something else out. And he tried different things, and some of it worked and some of it didn't. Jiu-jitsu is the same way. You know, you catch me in an armbar enough times the same way. Like if you're hard-headed, it takes you longer than somebody who's humble and open to like feedback. But at some point, I'm going to know, oh, he's setting up an armbar because he's done it to me a dozen times in the past 10 minutes. And you're not going to catch it anymore. And you are going to have to evolve because I did.
Yeah.
And I think that's the lesson that we're extracting here is that, yeah, don't go back and revisit because you want to beat yourself up. Just say, oh, you know what? If I was presented with that same set of circumstances, I'm going to respond this way now because that way hurt. That was painful.
Yeah. Let go of the judgment of what should have been.
Yeah.
And learn from what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
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 All right, let's move to the next question. This is CDLTN. So C. Dalton, maybe, I don't know. What did you learn about yourself in your darkest moment, and how can we collectively use this to pull the next man up? Yeah, man, this kind of ties into what we were just saying. There's so much to learn. For me, I learned that I had a lot of unrecognized, I'm hesitant to use the word trauma. I don't think everything's as traumatic as people like to use that term in.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of unrecognized experiences, I'll say experiences in my life that I healed in an incorrect way. Like, for example, if I were to break my leg and not have it set properly, it's always, and it heals incorrectly. It will still heal, but it heals incorrectly. It's always going to be a weak point in my life.
Yeah.
If the bone isn't aligned or isn't, a plate's not put on a bone to heal it, it's always going to be a weak point. And I realized that there's a lot of things that I do to cope with that without even realizing what I was coping with. I didn't even realize the problems. And so I became very aware of, first, the problems and where it came from and the stories around the experiences that I had. And are those stories serving me or are they not? And I'm still working through those stories. It's not like I fixed it in a year or something. And then I realized that once you might have to break the bone again, actually, if we're going to use that analogy. A doctor might go in and say, you know what, we need to re-injure you. We need to hurt you in order to set this properly so that moving forward, you're in a much better place with this leg. And that's the same thing about doing emotional work. You're actually re-injuring yourself. You're visiting painful experiences and moments and challenges and emotionally trying times so that you can get to the root of it and heal correctly. And I feel like when you do that, you can cope more effectively. Now, I don't need to drink in order to heal from things I wasn't even aware that were broken. And instead, I can consciously decide, oh, that's a story I'm telling myself. It's not entirely true. It's not entirely helpful. So I'm not going to listen to that story. I'm going to replace it with a better, more effective story. And then even in those moments of challenging times, because I'm not saying just knowing the stories makes everything go away, but now that I know and I'm basing it in reality, or at least a healthier version of fiction, I can do something healthier. Like I can go on a run, or I can talk about what I might be feeling. Or, I mean, you know this from experience. I've been more vocal with you and other close friends in the past 3 years than I've been the rest of the time that you and I have known each other.
It's totally true.
Because I realize I have to do that. I have to call you and say, hey, man, I'm dealing with this thing. What do you think? And some of those conversations are 5 minutes and some are an hour. I don't want to do that. That's like not my favorite thing to do. I'd rather just go get drunk. But that's the old version that wasn't serving me. The new version is, no, I'm going to do something different because this is going to serve me and the people I love better.
Let me ask you this. Maybe I'm in a bad place to be able to, I don't know, maybe this goes sideways or not, so push back because I don't want to send a bad message here. Using your analogy of the broken leg, I'm wondering, or I feel that sometimes there is no repairing the leg. Like it's broken, it's healed bad. And what you do with it is you're aware of it. So then that way you run differently. You don't put as much stress in that on that particular angle of it, and you pivot how you walk and how you run to deal with the damage that you have, and it's there, and it's forever there, and I know that kind of sounds, I don't know, real negative to the question, but I more and more I feel like it doesn't go away, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, first of all, analogies are never perfect, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're entirely wrong. Like, you're going to the things that happen to you don't ever go away.
Yeah.
Like I've talked with people who have been, both men and women, who have been sexually molested by people very close to them. And some have dealt with and confronted and coped in a very, very healthy way. And others have not. And they have a lot of contention and resentment and animosity. And of course, to be understood. Like I understood, I can understand that to the degree that I can. I've never been in their position, but I can understand why they would feel that way. But even the people that have dealt and coped with it in a healthy way, there's still pain.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's still present. But if we're going to really run with this analogy, one thing I think a person has to be aware of is, let's say they break their leg, it heals incorrectly for whatever reason, and now they have to learn how to walk or do things differently. A lot of the times, unless you're very aware of it, that can create other problems. So, for example,
overcompensate.
Yes. And so now your other leg hurts, or your hip hurts, or your shoulder hurts, and because of the way that you're walking now. And so what might this look like in real life is an alcoholic might decide to become sober and make that choice every single day for the rest of their life. But so he avoids alcohol, and he avoids places where he'll be tempted, and he has accountability and all the things that are good, but he never actually addresses the real problem. He's just going to pick up an addiction somewhere else. He's going to start, maybe he's addicted now to pornography, or maybe even something healthy. Maybe he's addicted to health to the point where it's just consumed every aspect of his life, and now he can't function in other aspects. So yeah, you will adjust, of course. If it's painful enough, yeah, you're going to adjust. But what is the adjustment doing to other aspects of your life? And unless you get to the root of the problem, you're just going to take the habit and transfer it from here to here. You're not going to do away with it.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. All right, let's go to, this is probably going to be the last one for me, Kipp, because I've got a hard stop. I'm going to pull up, I made a post on.
I have.
Oh, do you have some?
Mighty or Facebook?
Oh.
I have both of them up.
We've already done Iron Council.
Okay.
So let's go here. Here's one from Danny. He says, how financially stable should you be before getting married? Sorry, I was just saving that. How financially stable should you be before getting married? No, I don't agree with that, actually. Because if that's what you're waiting for, you'd never get married. You know what I think you need is, I think you need to know how money works to some degree, and I think you need good money management principles. But I don't think you need to be financially stable. If you're young, like if you're 21 years old or 25 and you're in college and your fiance is in college, like how financially stable are you going to be? You're not. Should you not get married? I don't think that would be a reason to keep you from getting married. But if you're 25 and you've got $75,000 in consumer debt and you don't know how to save your money and you're an idiot when it comes to money management, you're probably not ready to be responsible for another human being. You're not even responsible for yourself.
And the marriage is going to go south.
Of course
with
it is.
all those bad habits, yeah.
So what I would say is you should be learning money management skills. Learn how to budget. Learn how to stay out of debt. Be prudent in your financial decision-making process. If you have debt, figure out how to pay it off effectively. Use Dave Ramsey's snowball. I think that's the most effective way to pay down debt. maybe you're in a position where you can save a few $100 a month, or even $50 or $25 a month. Figure out how to live on not trying to keep up with the Joneses. You know, I've got my 2015 GMC 3/4 ton. It's a beautiful truck. It's in good condition. It drives well. It's clean, regular maintenance. I keep the inside clean. Like, that's important to me, because I went and looked at other trucks and they're like $90,000 to replace my current truck. And I would love to have a new truck. I see them and I'm like, man, that's a nice truck. I want it. And then I remember, I don't want everything else associated with it. I'm good with my 2015 3/4 ton that almost has 300,000 miles on it. Why would I get rid of that? It just doesn't make sense to me. But people do it all the time because they're dumb about their money management. But if you and your bride are intelligent and considerate about how to manage money properly, the wealth will actually come. And by the way, married people are usually wealthier and make more money than non-married people. So being married is actually, to the right person, I'll say that, being married to the right person is actually a prudent financial decision. So as long as you have those money management skills and you're willing to learn them as you go, you don't need to be totally financially stable in order to commit to one woman for the rest of your life.
Sound.
All right, I said that was the last one. Let's do one more.
Okay.
Oh, here's a good one. Practical advice after a breakup. I'm 28. We were together for 3 years. I ended it, but I still love her. That's a tough one. I think the first thing you need to really wrap your mind around is why you ended it. You ended it for a reason. And when you're feeling like you miss her and you love her, of course you still love her. You were with her for 3 years. If you didn't love her, that would be weird. So of course you still love her. But you made that decision hopefully for a good reason. And so in the moments where you think, oh man, like, I still love her, maybe I should call her, maybe we should try to work this out, just remember, when you were clear-headed, you ended it. And now you're not clear-headed, you're emotionally compromised. The other thing is memories tend to romanticize the best versions of people, I found, and the best versions of the experiences that we've had. I was talking with somebody just over this weekend. Yeah. So I was talking with somebody over the weekend, and we were talking about going to Disneyland and how many people just hate going to Disneyland, but when they come back, they say, oh, it's the greatest trip ever. I'm like, I'm not sure you remembered the trip the way that it actually went down, because you were miserable the entire time. But when we're looking back on something, we romanticize it and we think about the best versions of it instead of the reality of it. And the reality is that maybe you were miserable, which is why you ended it. Or maybe you weren't miserable, but your futures weren't aligned, and that's why you ended it. The other thing that I found that we do is we tend to romanticize a version of what could have potentially been, not what actually was. So when I think about the business, and I'm forward thinking, I'm not thinking catastrophically. I'm thinking, oh man, what if we had this many downloads and served this many people and created this much impact in the world, and I was making this kind of income, and it's all aspirational. And that's the story that I create in my head because of dreams. And then when I remember things, I remember the vision that I had, not the reality of what was. So your brain is lying to you. And in moments of emotional weakness, of course, you're gonna feel tempted and struggle. And so those are some mindset things, but practical things are make yourself the project now. Money management, creating health and strength in your life, taking on new hobbies, diving into your work, developing new friendships. Maybe when you've done this work, start dating again, because a new woman in your life will reinvigorate you in your life. But those are the more practical things. But at the end of the day, making yourself the project, especially in those moments where you're contemplating and thinking about her, if you have the right mindsets that I just shared with you and you're doing the right work, it's still gonna be hard. but it will be manageable and you'll know why you're doing what you're doing. Guys, well, we're going to wrap up today. I got a hard stop. So I appreciate all of you. Really good questions. There were several that I did not get to today that we will get to next week. We'll make sure we answer those questions for you. As far as call to actions, we just came up with a new resource. It's orderofman.com/bookshelf. There's 25 books on that bookshelf on the subjects of self-mastery, philosophy, health, sovereignty, fatherhood, specifically in regards to being a better man. So check it out, orderofman.com/bookshelf. Kipp, thanks for being here half of the time. It was the best half of this Ask Me Anything.
Hardly. All right. Appreciate you.
All right, guys. We'll catch you all on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.